Kalen, for this first, I know you and JC go way back to the Big Ten. What was going on with the chippiness there, and what explanation were you given for the tech that you got?
I'll take the official questions.
Have you ever seen a superstar snap on her own coach in the heat of battle? Have you ever wondered what it looks like when years of tension burst into a live TV moment? And it looked like Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White definitely had a situation where they were in a heated exchange right before halftime. Guys, word on the street is that Caitlin Clark and Stephanie White exchanged words going into halftime of this Atlanta Dream game. Now I'm here to tell you, no footage has emerged of the altercation yet, but give it a couple hours and someone's phone camera will light up the internet. Caitlin Clark snaps at her coach on live TV. Yes, it happened, and the entire basketball world is buzzing. But this wasn't a casual sideline spat. This was a breaking point that might tear the Indiana Fever apart from the inside.
There wasn't an explanation for the tech that she got. You know, I think it was pretty obvious that stuff was brewing, right? When the officials don't get control of the ball game.
On the surface, the Fever look like a young team still learning to win. Behind closed doors, though, chaos is brewing. Clark and White clearly respect each other, but respect doesn't always mean agreement. Clark believes in pushing the pace, in chaos that births open looks and record-breaking nights. White favors a grinded-out style, half-court patience, the kind of basketball that wins one possession at a time. Last night, those two philosophies collided at center court, and it got explosive.
When they allow that stuff to happen, and it's been happening all season long. All season long. It's not just this game, it's been happening all season long. This is what happens, right? This is what happens.
The tension built all game. In the first half, White's strategy held firm. The Fever trudged through mid-range jumpers and set plays that felt more suited to the 1,990s than a record-selling phenom in her prime. Fans winced every time Clark tried to push the ball. The score stayed close, but the flow was choppy. Then came that tunnel mouth moment. Clark, visibly frustrated, told White that it was time to bench players who ignored the game's best passer. Specifically, she called out veterans who consistently looked her off in key moments. No one passed, no one cut, and Clark snapped.
You've got competitive women who are the best in the world at what they do, right? And when you allow them to play physical and you allow these things to happen, they're going to compete. And they're going to have their teammates' backs.
When the second half tipped off, it was like someone opened a secret door. Clark went full throttle, sprinting coast to coast, forcing the defense to race back or risk easy buckets. Every time she grabbed a rebound or forced a turnover, she flashed that look, half grin, half challenge, daring her teammates to join her. Almost immediately, the offense clicked. The Fever poured in points, running white hot in transition. Suddenly, it wasn't about fractured schemes, it was about pure, unfiltered basketball joy. And the crowd roared like they'd found a long-lost treasure.
It's exactly what you expect, right, out of fierce competition. So, I started talking to the officials in the first quarter, and we knew this was going to.
By the end of the third quarter, the Fever had erupted for nearly 100 points. Highlight reel after highlight reel showed Clark dishing pinpoint passes, draining deep threes, and even taking charges like a seasoned defender. She refused to let the momentum slip back to the old way. Every timeout huddle became a mini pep talk from Clark herself, as she barked instructions, pointed out misses, and rallied her teammates to keep up or get out of the way. But the real story wasn't the surge in scoring, it was the look on White's face. Pride and perplexity, as if she was watching a student suddenly rewrite the textbook on how her team should play. You could almost hear the mental gears turning, wondering whether to reclaim control or hand over the reins to the player who just transformed the game.
Happen. You could tell it was going to happen, so they got to get control of it. They got to be better. They got to be better.
Can you specifically detail what you mean by get control of the game?
Beyond the court, locker room whispers spread fast. Some players, the ones who thrive off laid-out systems, felt cast aside. Others, hungry for speed and flair, rallied behind Clark. Sophomore shooters who'd spent months adjusting to set plays now sprinted off screens, cutting to the rim and competing for extra possessions. The energy shifted from dutiful execution to irrepressible enthusiasm. At the post-game media scrum, Clark kept a cool edge. She praised the adjustments that gave us life, but didn't sugarcoat which adjustments she meant. White danced through questions, complimenting Clark's leadership while insisting the team would continue to blend both styles. Everyone left with more questions than answers, knowing the real drama was only beginning. Now the Fever face a choice: Stick with a coach's vision that's shown cracks, or embrace the raw force of their superstar, who just reminded everyone why arenas sell out when she's on the court. The next practice promises to be a chess match, and the next game a referendum on who truly runs this team.
And just to be, in your words,
Get control of the game is call the fouls that are actually happening on the floor. Right, and consistently call the fouls that are actually happening on the floor. Okay, not just if somebody...
The locker room buzzed long after the final horn. Faces glowed with sweat and adrenaline, but the smiles were mixed. Some players reveled in the thrill of victory and the momentum shift, while others sat quietly wrestling with the split-second exchange that had sent shockwaves through the arena. Equipment managers moved swiftly, stacking chairs and wiping down benches, as if erasing the chaos of a fractured halftime could restore a sense of order. In that charged space, every glance carried weight. Teammates gauging loyalties, assessing who stood firmly with Clark's call for accountability. Beneath the hum of chatter, an unspoken question lingered. Had the team just passed a test, or set a fuse that would spark further unrest? Meanwhile, Coach White retreated to her office, clutching a clipboard like a lifeline. She replayed the footage in her mind, each frame revealing a coach's dilemma: seize control or yield to a rising star's vision. Her assistant coaches circled in, offering cautious analysis and tentative nods. They juggled scouting reports, game tape, and injury updates, trying to forge a path forward despite the rift. White's voice, usually calm and composed, took on a steely edge as she outlined adjustments for the next practice. More transition sets, tighter defensive rotations, and above all, clearer lines of communication. Every plan felt urgent, as though the very soul of the Fever hinged on the coming days.
He swings and misses, right? Like, consistently call the fouls.
Coach, do you think it's something pertaining to your team, or do you think this is a league-wide issue?
Few veteran players spoke openly. They'd weathered locker room bust-ups before, where passion boiled over into terse comments and slammed doors. Some sympathized with Clark's frustration, recognizing the pain of coming off a screen only to have no pass thrown your way. Others feared publicly siding with the rookie phenom, worried it might label them as disloyal to the coaching staff. In hushed tones, they debated whether standing by Clark would propel a dynasty or ignite an internal war. The tension felt like a pressure cooker. One wrong move, and the release could be catastrophic. On the opposite end, the younger players thrived on the unfolding drama. They saw in Clark's outburst proof that boldness pays off. Eyes bright with ambition, they replayed highlight reels on their phones, tagging each play that showcased Clark's fearless pace and space attacks. For them, this was the moment they'd been waiting for, a shift away from rigid sets to a playground of improvisation. They leaned into Clark's style, craving freedom to cut, to fill lanes, to let instinct guide their step. Their energy reminded everyone that basketball, at its heart, is a game of spontaneity and heart.
Well, I've seen quite a few dust-ups in the league so far, so I think it's a league-wide issue. I mean, bad officiating is bad officiating.
And then what did you make of Sophie Cunningham's flagrant foul?
Outside the team's bubble, the media storm erupted. Pundits dissected every syllable from that halftime snap, spinning hot takes about power dynamics and locker room mutiny. Social media timelines flooded with split-screen comparisons, Clark's fiery eyes versus White's inscrutable calm. Meme surface Clark wielding a megaphone, White buried under X's and O's. Every sports bar and office water cooler became a war zone of opinion. Yet amid the clickbait, one message resonated. This was not ordinary friction. It was a clash at the crossroads of tradition and innovation. Fans online split into camps. Some donned jersey swaps, Clark's No 22 alongside banners reading, "Let her run!" Others waved flags for White, insisting that experience and structure would ultimately win. Hashtag wars trended, Clark control versus White wisdom, each side rallying followers. Season ticket holders flagged for trades and coaching changes, their voices echoing off league offices. Through it all, the Fever's brand recast itself as the most unpredictable story in women's basketball. A team defined not by scores alone, but by its capacity to surprise.
On JC towards the end,
It was a flagrant foul.
do you think it's like defending Caitlin or defending the team, or how do you view just how it opened?
I view it as a flagrant foul.
Across the league, rivals licked their chops. The Liberty's front office watched with glee, knowing a fractured Fever presented an opening. The Sky's coaching staff plotted ways to exploit any lingering tension, replicating Clark's lethal pace while daring the Fever to keep up. Even the Mercury, stuck in their own rebuild, saw a cautionary tale. Harness star power carefully or risk an implosion. In boardrooms and war rooms, general managers traded encrypted messages about potential trades, coaching swaps, and draft strategies. The WNBA's landscape shifted overnight as one sideline flare-up rippled through every team's spreadsheets. Back in Indiana, the front office convened an emergency meeting. Executives sifted through ticket sales data, merchandise projections, and sponsorship reports, trying to gauge whether controversy boosted or sank the brand. One VP argued the drama was a marketing windfall. Fans pay top dollar for unpredictability and backstage peaks. Another warned that a fractured locker room could undermine long-term growth, risking season ticket cancellations and sponsor pullouts. Spreadsheet rows blinked with red flags and green arrows, each cell a reminder that basketball's bottom line is more than points per game. It's public perception.
I'll ask about the game too.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys came for basketball.
Yeah,
Let's
no,
talk
seriously.
about basketball.
Yeah.
Come on now.
What do you think of just?
Practice the next morning felt electric. Coach White arrived with a clipboard in hand and a look of determined authority. Clark led the warm-ups, voice ringing clear as a bell, issuing quick commands to younger players. The practice floor buzzed with urgency. Fast break drills, relentless closeouts, and controlled chaos scrimmages. Every drill ended with a brief huddle, White offering feedback, Clark reinforcing the new pace, then a shared nod before the next run. It was a delicate dance, blending discipline with daring, strategy with improvisation. A sports psychologist was brought in that afternoon to guide the team through the turbulence. In a circle of chairs on the practice court, the group shared frustrations and hopes, naming the tension without shame. The psychologist coaxed players to see conflict as a catalyst rather than a curse, fuel that, when harnessed, could refine bonds instead of breaking them. Conversations flowed more freely, revealing common ground and a love for the game and desire to win. By the session's end, a mutual understanding emerged. Firm leadership and fearless creativity could coexist if each side bent just enough.
Just how you all were able to pull away in the second half, Caitlin, in
We're
particular.
going to the Commissioner Cup Championship.
Let's
That's
go!
pretty exciting. Y'all want to talk about that? Let's talk about that.
Clark's own leadership style deepened. She held impromptu film sessions with teammates, breaking down her reads and passing angles. She praised hustle plays, tracked rebounds, and pointed out defensive lapses, always with a razor-sharp focus. At times, she injected humor, playful jabs at a clumsy cut or an errant pass, but her message was clear. Excellence demands purpose. Through these subtle moments, Clark's teammates began to see her not just as a phenom, but as a captain honing her crew for battle. White, too, showed cracks of flexibility. In a surprise move, she inserted a fast break sub package during scrimmage, giving Clark a lead guard role and 3 shooters trailing in motion. The result? A slurry of open looks, crisp cuts, and thundering dunks that drew cheers even from the sternest assistants. White's grin afterwards signaled a breakthrough. They could merge her half-court schemes with Clark's transition craft. It wasn't a surrender, but an evolution. A coach recognizing the prowess of her brightest pupil.
Go ahead, Fee.
Propose a trade. Propose a trade. Let's go.
Well, this
Okay.
obviously
To make this spicy, just because
we like
Sue
spice.
is my number one overall.
Rumors swirled of potential trades. Veterans who resisted the new pace might be shopped before the deadline. One whispered name was a veteran forward known for hesitant cuts and mid-range shots. Another was a backup guard rumored to resist sprinting back on defense. Whether those moves materialize remained to be seen, but the message was clear. The Fever's front office would no longer tolerate mismatches between roster and system. Change was coming, from the front office to the practice court. History offered perspective. Legendary athlete-coach feuds, Jerry West versus Jim Eakins, Magic Johnson versus Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, had defined eras and propelled teams to new heights once the dust settled. The Fever's saga felt like the next chapter in that tradition, tension birthing triumph, conflict spawning camaraderie. If past examples held, the team that mastered friction would emerge leaner, sharper, and more unified. The rest would fade into hindsight, memories of what might have been.
Overall pick, so I would need to make this big. You have to give me your number one overall pick and your teammate, Aaliyah Boston.
Whoa.
With the playoffs looming, the stakes soared. Every possession felt like a referendum on identity, grit and grind soul, or the high-octane storm that Clark embodied. Opponents studied the Fever like archaeologists, piecing together clues from that infamous halftime moment. Yet for all the analysis, the true test would come under the bright lights of the postseason, when coaching adjustments and superstar commands meant the difference between victory and heartbreak. The ripple effect of that sideline eruption carried into the very next game. From tip-off, the Fever moved like a team reborn. Every cut crisp, every sprint urgent, every pass electrified by Clark's insistence on pace. Even the bench hummed with anticipation, slapping the court as new lineups unleashed fast-break fury. You could almost hear rookie mistake alerts pinging in opponents' heads. Don't let her get out.
Absolutely not. Not happening. Good try.
We have 2 rejected
I don't even think Fee actually.
Behind the scenes, analytics whizzes poured over tracking data. They flagged that Indiana's transition efficiency jumped by 40% when Clark touched the ball above the foul line, and that opponent defensive ratings cratered after her first 5 sprints per half. Those numbers weren't just stats, they were blueprints for victory. Meanwhile, dotted across social feeds, playful memes celebrated the Great Fever Schism with tongue-in-cheek math equations. Coaches, X's and O's, plus superstar speed equals unstoppable. Fans reveled in the drama, but more importantly, they tuned in, ratings spiked, merchandise sold out, and suddenly every Fever game felt like an unmissable event. This is the power of conflict turned catalyst. When structure meets spontaneity, when a coach's wisdom collides with a star's momentum, you don't just get wins, you redefine a team's DNA. So buckle up, because Indiana's next chapter promises even bigger swings, sharper moments, and a showdown between order and ignition that no fan will forget. If you're on board with shaking up the status quo, smash that like button and declare your support in the comments. If you believe that balance and control will conquer chaos, hit subscribe and show your faith in solid fundamentals. Wherever you stand, stay tuned because this saga is just heating up and the real fireworks are ahead.